Hello everyone! There's been quite a lot going on over the Blizzard Activision recently, and quite a few of you have asked for my commentary on it. Now, we discussed it several times on stream, and I don't think that I have anything groundbreaking to say. The investigation and the things that are mentioned, I'm honestly not even sure if I could discuss the details under YouTube's TOS. And the response from Blizzard, it's been disappointing to say the least. So much so that the employees they've grouped up, they made a voice of their own, since that of their employer, it does not represent them. In the meantime, some names have already come up, some people have been replaced, and more are sure to follow. But personally, I think that's just the start. It doesn't really matter much what names run the company when there's no change in policy. Change that their employees want and that they deserve, and change that's going to take time to happen. At least, I really hope it's actually going to happen. Now, obviously, the question has also been asked, what about my content? Will I stick with WoW or move on to other things? And I'm not entirely sure yet. What I really want to do on the channel is to one day have all the lore of Warcraft covered. You want a story of Jaina or Sylvanas or a Lillian? There it is, available on the channel. But as someone pointed out on stream, that is an ever-moving goalpost, with new lore being added with each new expansion. A very fair point, but we're about done with 9.1. At the time of making this, we got one more super duper secret campaign chapter that's going to be released, and that will be 9.1 covered. There's also the Shadowlands Grimoire book, which recently arrived. I would like to talk about that. And then there's plenty of time to dive into all the characters, or older moments that I still want to cover. Characters like, for example, Thrall or Ronin, Krasus, Deathwing, just major stories that are still left to tell. If you have requests or suggestions, by all means let me know, I'll add them to my list, and I really want to follow those through. That's a goal that I'd really like to accomplish, and in that time, as I'm working on that, I can keep an eye out for what's happening over at Blizzard. I'll still be streaming a bit of variety over the Twitch. We've also been doing workout streams, as I've been on quite the health journey since last year. I've lost like 30 kilograms now, which is really, really fun. And then we'll see what the future is going to bring. A few people have messaged me with concerns, like what's going to happen to our little community. There's a whole bunch of amazing people that have come together throughout the years that hang out in the chats or on Discord, and no matter what might happen, don't worry about it. I'm not just suddenly going to vanish from the internet. The community is not just one day gonna go poof. So there's the little update on what's been going on, and truth be told, I'm quite looking forward to diving back into all the characters again. Sadly, the major story of the Shadowlands, it's not really doing it for me. The potential of going into the afterlife, the roster of Warcraft's fallen villains and heroes. I was really excited for the Shadowlands in general, and there have been some cool moments. I find the newly added characters to definitely be a strong point of the expansion. It's gonna be with great sadness when we'll have to say goodbye to characters like Lady Moonberry. They even kept the Nephrius going because he became so popular. I'm even invested in this whole cosmic war of Warcraft that they're building up. Diving deeper into the cosmic forces and their effects upon the Warcraft universe. I'm quite invested, but then there are moments in the story that just make me go, why? Why did you do this? Why did you dumb down a character? That's not to say that I suddenly hate all the lore, it's just that certain things don't work for me, they don't hit home. It's not the first time this happened either. I remember a certain robot cat questline back in Mr. Pandaria. That got the rage going quite nicely as well. But what am I talking about? Well, in my opinion, the biggest flaw with the storytelling that's going on is that they're keeping it far too vague. There's a time and place to make room for speculation, to drop little hints, let the player base go crazy. And then there are times where you simply need to tell your story. A great example, that would be the Sylvanas jailer storyline. There are huge gaps that still need to be explained. Pieces of the lore that still need to be filled in. We know that she got in touch with him after dropping from Icecrown. But what exactly did they talk about? How was this walking Frostmourne able to convince someone like Sylvanas to join his side? Wouldn't she push towards the exact opposite? Like, she was pissed off at Arthas and the Lich King and all the things that happened to her. Imagine her reaction to the one that was actually behind it. It's crazy to think that the moment where she got in touch with the jailer, right? Dropping from the top of Icecrown, landing in a maw down below. That's just part of a short story. I don't believe it's actually been mentioned in-game what happened to her. Now, there are reasons and stories you can give to her allegiance with the jailer, but you do need to tell those storylines. Otherwise, you end up at the Moment Supreme, at the ending of the Sanctum of Domination. The jailer has all that he wants, and he decides to betray Sylvanas. He draws his own plans, shocked and surprised we all are that the guy who lives in the Sanctum of Domination, who uses domination magic, who forced Anduin into a mind control puppet, that this guy is not all about setting people free. I've said it before, but a reaction like this one...
I will never serve.
You just were serving him, right?
It has a lot more value to me than someone that goes, well, actually, if you would just pay attention and you read these 3 books, then you add this short story, maybe a little cutscene you want to watch on YouTube, and interpret these conversations in just the right way, as I simply fill in the blanks for you, as I make up my own lore, then it all makes perfect sense why someone like Sylvanas would serve the jailer, while not actually serving him. If that's how the story is presented, you're failing at telling your story. A video game story where people, if they don't instantly get it and they need to rely on very specific interpretations and self-inserts as to what's going on, it's not the greatest thing. Fair enough that not everything has to be available at the start. There are patches and stories that come in later, but these are definitely some critical plot points that you're not filling in. Not even going into the whole roller coaster that is the story of Sylvanas. And then, a couple of weeks ago now, we finally had that long-awaited Elune reveal. The Night Warrior storyline that started back in Battle for Azeroth. You got Tyrande Whisperwind, who is hell-bent on claiming vengeance for Teldrassil. She has done nothing but hunt down the Banshee Queen. She has jumped, despite people going like, please don't do so, she has jumped into the Maw herself. During the Night Fae campaign, we then tried to convince her to come back, but no, Tyrande was gonna claim vengeance, so she spent 9.0 inside a Torghast. Patch 9.1 comes around, she finally makes a return with the attack on Ardenweald, and again, she wants nothing but vengeance. To which they put her asleep. One hell of a power nap apparently, since next thing we know, Tyrande is given a choice. Vengeance or renewal. And she decides, you know what, we're gonna go for renewal this time around. A Stay a While and Listen, where she's praised for being such a good leader, and they talk about how she was so consumed by their fires of vengeance, that she was blind to the ashes at their feet. She sees now that while many of their people desire retribution, what they need most is renewal. Right here, there's just a whole lot of storytelling that's missing to explain why she now suddenly doesn't want vengeance. When exactly did she check up on the Night Elves and figure out like, oh yeah, we're gonna go for renewal? Why couldn't she get both? Why couldn't she rip off the head of Sylvanas and then go for renewal? Where was the choice then? And again, that's not even going into this whole Elune sending souls into the Shadowlands bit. But in my opinion, it's a waste of a storyline. It's such a shame to see them drop it in such piss-poor fashion. What was the point of the Night Warrior storyline, right? You can see that there are certain story beats that they want to hit, but there is a story to tell, a road that you need to walk before you should arrive at the conclusion. So yeah, that's my current feelings towards the Shadowlands lore. There are some good moments, some things that keep me interested, and then some really bad moments. It's kept far too vague for me, and of course, there's also the bit about it not landing right with the people. They really just missed their answer off and the stories that followed. But again, it's not the first time this has happened, and it probably won't be the last. Who knows what the next chapter is going to bring. One final thing that I want to add to the video before we say goodbye for today. That's something that I've been asked a couple of times. What kind of story would then I have liked to have seen go down with Sylvanas and the Shadowlands as a whole? And to be fair, I just move a couple of the puzzle pieces around, but I would make one major change. Do not have Sylvanas as an ally to the jailer. Rather, she would be our Bolvar. She would guide us against him. So, let's go back in time to the moment that we now know she got in touch with the jailer. She dropped from the top of Icecrown into what we now know as the Maw. She enters her bargain with the Valkyr. That's what was required to get out of the Maw again, but she doesn't know about the jailer anymore. He is still there, he definitely notices her, he makes his plans to make use of her in the future. But for now, it's the story as we knew it before. There is Sylvanas, the Valkyr, trying to stay out of the Maw. We can fast forward a bit, let the story play out until the start of Legion. The Broken Shore happens as we know it. Varian and Vol'jin die, with Anduin and Sylvanas taking over. But her appointment as War Chief It makes her question what is going on. Why would the Darkspear make her, out of all the other candidates, make her the war chief? Something's not quite right, and she would soon enough find out more details. As a journey, it takes her into Stormheim in pursuit of power to create more Valkyr. That's where she has a nice little chat with Helya, someone who's also quite familiar with having their life ripped away from them, being controlled by another. She informs the Dark Lady about the threat of the jailer and the manipulations that he's pulling. Muzala has tricked Vol'jin into making her the war chief, all according to the jailer's plans of having her as leader of the hordes. The Dreadlord infiltration that led to so much death and suffering on the Broken Shore, then forcing the horde to retreat, which was seen by the Alliance as a great betrayal. There are tensions that are rising between the factions, and how better to escalate it all than have Windrunner lead them. Again, Greymane has already showed that he's quite willing to ignore Anduin's wishes for peace for all. The Boy King's new position as leader of the Alliance, it was not one earned like his father had, but rather it was passed on to him for some reason. The respect that the other leaders show him, it's more a courtesy. So some amongst the Alliance, they could easily overpower him, they could easily push towards more hostile actions. So with Greymane, who has now prevented her from enslaving Aeir, Sylvanas, she goes on a quest of trying to convince the world that there's a big bad waiting for them within the Shadowlands. But her history and the recent events, it makes it a fool's errand, as there are not enough willing to listen to her. The Alliance and the Horde, they go at each other as they usually do. While heroes of the world, they form their order halls and they take the battle to the Legion. Death and destruction follows, with a big old sword stuck in the world. Azerite, it's going to change everything. This new resource, it can be used for good, for healing, for building, or it can be used as a weapon of mass destruction. Both sides quickly figure this out, and it's the Alliance that decides that enough is enough. The Horde has showed them time and time again that they can't be trusted, and now they're under the rule of Sylvanas Windrunner. It's time to do what Varian should have done, back at the Siege of Orgrimmar. He probably regrets not doing so now. It is time to dismantle the hordes. The Alliance strikes first with their siege of Lordaeron, rather than it beginning with the horde invasion of Darkshore. This makes it so that the horde's actions are now a defensive counter, rather than a hostile invasion one, aimed at creating as much death as possible. As we must remember that Sylvanas, she doesn't want to send more souls towards the jailer, but her hands are kinda tied. Do nothing, and the horde might eat itself from within. Their enemies might take them out. So reluctantly, she now leads their invasion into the Night Elven lands, and they get their asses kicked for it. Imagine deciding to invade the home of the Night Elves. They've been fighting for their piece of the land for like over 10,000 years now, and the horde think that they can get to them when they have a home field advantage. Not to mention that they also got like druids, dryads, cenarius, ancients, Tyrande and Malfurion that work together in unison, the powers of Elune and his druidic skills. Lore-wise, they performed some insane feats. Imagine what kind of pain they could bring to the horde, but it also means that there's no burning of Teldrassil, and sadly, it wouldn't change anything drastic about the course of the story. Sure enough, you could want to deal with a Night Warrior, but there are multiple Night Warriors in the Warcraft universe, so you could invent a new one, if that's truly the story that you need to play out with Elune, or you could come up with something else entirely. What exactly did the burning of Teldrassil accomplish for the story? Well, Tyrande became the Night Warrior. As Night Warrior, she took out one of the Valkyr, which meant nothing, because, we fought them in Sanctum of Domination. She took out Nephanos, which might still play a part at some point, but either way, Sylvanas is now against the jailer, so what does it matter? Yeah, what did the Night Warrior actually do, and what did the burning of Teldrassil do? So back to this alternate storytelling. The Horde's defeat, it has them desperately search for new allies, in the form of the Zandalari. The Alliance, they add the Khaltirans. Battle for Azeroth, it pretty much plays out the way that we know it. Sylvanas will do whatever it takes to get the job done. That's how she's always been. So dealings with like Azora or twisting Derek's mind, they're not off the table. Someone like Sourfang could still turn around and question why it is that she's leading them. Her words of trying to open her eyes to the bigger threat out there, it might alienate her from a leader position. She might not call them all nothing, which in my opinion is an improvement, but there's still plenty of reasons you come up with why Sylvanas would abandon the Horde and then later show up again, because ultimately, we do need to go into the Shadowlands. And this time around, the Alliance and the Horde fighting each other, not listening to her warnings. It's been sending all these souls down below, and the jailer's power and influence is growing. No longer can Bolvar keep himself under control. His 4 horsemen find out that darkness has taken hold at the top of Icecrown. Sylvanas' words are proven true. And this time, she doesn't have the power of the jailer running through her, so that whole battle with Bolvar, it's going to be a lot more difficult. Not impossible per se, there are plenty of heroes to rise up with her, plenty of power that we could throw against Bolvar, until the helmet drops on the floor and she rips it apart. It is time to take the battle to our enemy and venture through the veil. She once did everything in her power to claim vengeance upon Arthas for what he had done to her. Imagine the wrath that she would unleash upon the source behind all of that, guiding her efforts like Bolvar would have done. And of course, you can add a lot more details to this storyline with like an Anduin or a Gen or a Liam or whatever story you want to add. But mainly, it's about Sylvanas not being an ally to the jailer, but rather she stands against him. Now I do really wonder what that Sylvanas book set for next year is going to add, what that is going to explain. I've heard the arguments of, just wait and see, twists and turns are still coming, but that falls back to my original points. The major plotlines, the major story, it should be clear in-game at certain points in time, and you can add books to it, you can add flavor and more insight, but the massive beats of it, the massive plot points, they should be clear for everybody, at least in my opinion. So yeah, there's my quick update and what I wanted to say today. Coming Friday, we should be able to do the super duper secret campaign chapter. Really curious what that might reveal. I also want to get out a review for the Grimoire book, and hopefully then coming Monday we'll cover some of the major details of the story that's told inside. All that is gonna be for the future though. So for now, as always, thank you very much for watching everyone. Subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one. And until next time, see ya!